Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to a Radulich and Broadcasting premiere podcast. Damn you, Hollywood! And here's your host from the College of the Undead, an expert on zombies everywhere, Dr. Robert Winfree. Yay!
I suppose if there's something I was going to get a doctorate in, it might be zombie related. That makes sense.
You seem like you would be you would have a PhD in undead studies. You seem like the type.
I imagine if it were offered, I could get down with that. Anyway, that is the dulcet tones of Mark Radulich. He is joining us per usual for today's episode of Damn You Hollywood. We will be talking about Zack Snyder's latest feature film, Army of the Dead, which is his return to the zombie genre after he, I wouldn't say completely revolutionized it, but maybe gave it a slightly different look when he did his version of Dawn of the Dead several years ago now. Geez, that was like 2006, wasn't it?
Maybe. What I find much more interesting is this note that I see on the Wikipedia page that they announced this in 2007, not but 14 years ago. But it spent several years in development hell at Warner Brothers before having the rights bought by Netflix. What monkey is running Warner Brothers?
Well, to be fair, right around that same time, Snyder got busy with other projects. So if he had to be attached to it, that could easily be part of the issue that developed. Also, sometimes things just get stuck in development hell sometimes for good reasons, sometimes for bad reasons. Sometimes your property is championed by a specific executive or individual, and that guy gets fired or promoted to a different position or leaves the company or whatever. That's not uncommon.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes elements of your principal people involved in it find other things that, you get a little bit of the, ooh, shiny.
Sometimes some of your major cast members have several sexual misconduct accusations made at them, and they have to leave the film and then are replaced by another comedian.
So who? Okay, I mean that's fair enough. But what are you referencing specifically?
Chris D'Elia. He was originally cast in the film, but he was replaced by Tig Notaro.
Okay.
Who is my favorite character in the entire movie, by the way. She has the best line readings.
Who's she play?
She's the pilot.
Okay. Yeah, so point being, a lot of stuff can happen, but for you to be stuck in development hell for that long, especially since it feels like the only additions they made to the script over that period of time was a revision to go, hey, Trump's in office. Let's play around with that for a couple of scenes, yeah? Which just, oh god, I can't tell you. I've mentioned this before on this show. Like, my least favorite thing about consuming media like this is almost certainly going to be the propensity over the next couple of years for people who wrote stuff and it's just finally getting published or created over the previous 5, give or take, is just every villain's going to be Trump. And I just...
Yeah,
it's so lazy and it's so stupid.
We had a lot of that with Reagan. We had a lot of that with Bush. I mean, we had a little bit of that with Clinton. We've had none of it with Barack Obama.
No one has the balls to portray that man in a negative light.
I mean, I don't want to get off on a whole thing with him, but in terms of just being a broad character, Reagan, there was definitely a lot to lampoon there. Not so much Bush the first. Only, the only thing, he had that one catchphrase that Dana Carvey used to make fun of, and he threw up on the Japanese prime minister. But other than that, he was pretty straight and narrow. Clinton was a broad character that was easily made fun of and was. Bush was hated. People thought he stole the election, was perceived to be an idiot, et cetera, et cetera. So he was a broad character that was easy to make fun of.
None of which, for the record, is accurate about Bush. Whether you are a fan of his or not, he didn't steal the election.
No, and I really don't want to get into any of that. I'm saying what I'm leading to is it's hard to make fun of Barack Obama. He didn't do anything in office so outlandish that it makes for an easy target by people looking for cheap humor and low-hanging fruit, the way you can for Reagan, Clinton, and Bush and Trump. It's just
okay. Again, I've said this before. There was the entire Saturday Night Live debacle about Obama, where they said, "Man, we couldn't get our fingernails into him to kind of make fun of him." I just went, "So what you're saying is you're bad at your job."
Yeah, I mean, if you think hard enough, there's always something you can make fun of somebody for.
You don't even have to think that. You don't have to think that hard about it for Obama.
As somebody who makes fun of people all the time, the way I do, and holds nothing back. It's not as hard as they're making it out to be, but I think when it's so easy with the aforementioned presidents that I have mentioned, it's a little harder. It's a little harder with Barack Obama. But anyway, back to Army of the Dead.
They went from the lowest of hanging fruit to, man, I'll just lay here and open my mouth and wait for it to rain.
Fair enough.
I mean, like, Saturday Night Live's been sucking wind for well over a decade at this point, so I don't actually care in that respect. But yeah, it's. And again, that only gets brought up here because they very deliberately reference the Trump administration a couple of times.
Can I say it didn't bother me? Like, we're talking about a heist movie in Vegas in the middle of a zombie apocalypse. You want to make fun of the president? Be my fucking guest. I mean, I've seen it done better and worse simultaneously. I'm looking squarely at you, Escape from New York.
That's fair. As good as Escape from New York is as a general rule, you're entirely correct about it.
Yeah. So look, if you're a liberal and you are blessed enough to be able to be trusted with making major motion pictures for big time studios, and occasionally you want to poke at the president, I'm not getting a hard on about it. I'm just not. As long as it doesn't detract from the movie, and considering it was like news clippets, and and the line itself is funny. It was like, the president thought it would be cool. What a fireworks display on the 4th of July if we set up a nuke. And I laughed at that. So I'm gonna Judge Radulich will allow it.
Fair enough. All right, so the movie itself opens with a military convoy having some really bad luck, is usually how. That's one of the very cliched ways that zombie movie starts. With some kind of zombified character, but not a traditional zombified character. Oh no, this is not a slow-moving, dullard shambler. This is, oh god, the laziest bit of writing is, we'll call them alphas. Really? Just really? That's as lazy as calling your miracle material unobtainium, which has happened in several movies. just lazy. Anyway, this character is freed during containment when the convoy gets into a wreck. Right on the outskirts of Las Vegas, convenient that. He and a few of the other soldiers that have been turned into alpha zombies go through Las Vegas. They tear it to pieces. We get our kind of like title card opening sequence where we're loosely introduced to characters set over the zombie apocalypse in the city of Las Vegas, leading to it being quarantined off. The high watermark for this kind of opening sequence to introduce you to everything is still the first Zombieland. With For Whom the Bell Tolls by Metallica playing in the background.
Yeah, this was Richard Cheese's Viva Las Vegas.
Which, again, it's not the worst. It just felt very derivative.
I mean...
And when it was originally written in 2007, it was probably a bit more timely.
Yeah, well, Richard Cheese has not aged well. But, his sort of... not people knowing about him in the mainstream media, that time has passed. And so, I remember him, but I'm fucking old. But the other thing about it is... you set your movie in Vegas. Your your opening is a casino run amok with topless showgirl zombies, which was hilarious to me. For Whom the Bell Tolls, while funnier in general in Zombieland, doesn't really fit the motif when it's when what you're doing is playing with Vegas. So maybe don't do Richard T's Viva Las Vegas if there's a better choice out there. But something referencing Vegas would have is appropriate.
I just mean like the whole sequence in general. I don't disagree. I don't disagree with you about the kind of like general choice of song. You needed something that was very referential to the location because this movie goes out. One of the good things about this movie, I'll preview some of my comments here. They absolutely do what they can to make the most of the setting.
Yeah. And that's half the fun of the movie. If it's a heist movie set in Vegas, okay, Ocean's 11, right? But zombies, oh, okay. Well, then you better make your set pieces all Vegas-y and look cool.
Yeah, and again, to their credit, I think they do. So one of the better points of the movie. Anyway, we're introduced to our characters briefly. They're all they're all military personnel who are saving people, exfiltrating people from the zombie apocalypse, from the zombie outbreak. It's not an apocalypse; it's just an outbreak. Saving people from the outbreak in Vegas, and again, the whole place gets locked down. We then flash forward a little bit, not an indeterminate amount of time, and the White House, in all of its infinite wisdom, no matter who's in that particular chair, they're all idiots, has decided that, you know what? We can't save the people. We can't save this. We're just going to nuke Las Vegas. And, I mean, on a moral level, I can certainly appreciate the logic thereof. And I just mean nuking Las Vegas in general. Peters gets the best line about that. Nuking Vegas, huh? They should have done that back in the 80s.
Wah, 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 wah.
Our main character, played by Dave Bautista, is approached by Scorpion from the most recent Mortal Kombat movie. He is the owner of one of the casinos in Las Vegas, so he's basically one of the Fertitta brothers. And he approaches him with an offer. Says, "Hey, there's $400 million or whatever it was in cash in a vault under my casino. Now, I've already been reimbursed by the insurance company for this particular money after the zombie outbreak. So this money is now essentially free and clear. Now, I can't really spend it because I've already been reimbursed. But if you get it for me, I can launder it, and I will give you a finder's fee of $50 million, and you can divvy that up amongst the rest of your crew however you see fit." And Batista is suitably impressed by this particular financial offer. He thinks about it and decides, yeah, sure. He assembles his ragtag group of misfits, and they head off for the I'm not going to get into the assemblage of heroes. We'll talk about them specifically. And they head off to the quarantine camp, which exists right outside the quarantine city. Convenient, that. To sneak into the facility, to sneak into Las Vegas and then go rob this, and then go, steal this money. The other character is Dave Bautista's stepdaughter, who is a volunteer at the quarantine camp.
Not his stepdaughter, a strange daughter.
I thought they were not. The way they talked about the mother, it just kind of felt like.
I mean, I get it. I can see why you might interpret it that way, but I'm just reading off the wiki. It says a strange, not step.
I will go with the wikis. The infinite wisdom of whoever edited the Wikipedia article then.
Sounds great.
His daughter is, again, a volunteer here. They've been a little bit estranged since he had to kill his wife / her mother, apparently, to save, well, one way or the other. Actually, those would both be true either way. To save, after she became zombified, and he handled this badly. He, again, joined the military. After he got kind of mustered out of that, he became a cook at a crappy diner. And he's, a little bit wanting the money, but he's also, we come to find out, he's planning on giving the vast majority, if not all of it, to his daughter. You can do something with this. help people. I know you're going to do the right thing with it, that kind of stuff. So initially she is only used to introduce them to our Coyote character who can get them in past the quarantine, the barricade of container ships, of containers that have isolated the Las Vegas area. But one of her friends in the quarantine camps has been trying to sneak into Vegas to crack open a slot machine and use the money to better her children's lives. And she didn't come back from her excursion, so now, of course, the daughter's coming, because that's just what happens in these movies. So they break in, they leave an offering for the group of alphas, and this is when we get a little bit of exposition about how this works. There's the class of zombies that are the traditional shamblers. Then there's the alphas. These are stronger, faster, smarter, slightly organized zombies that have a hierarchy and have some kind of loose, they're basically chimps in that particular respect, but their slightly elevated intelligence needs to be respected. So they leave an offering of Theo Rossi, which is accepted. They make their way to the casino. One of them dies. It turns out that the guy who was implanted by the casino owner and his nefarious group of ne'er-do-wells is much like Paul Reiser. He's here to secure a sample, and to hell with the consequences. So while they are cracking the safe, he and the Coyote head back and they lure out the what do they call her? The Queen, one of these zombies. They lure her out, they decapitate her, put her head in a bag, and head off. This all goes badly because apparently this particular zombie was pregnant either when turned or in some very, very odd fetish manifestation. Maybe got pregnant after. So our lead alpha zombie, they refer to him as Zeus. He gets pissed. He sends all of the alphas after this remaining group. Chases ensue. Few action set pieces. Most of the characters die. This is all set against the backdrop of a shifting timeline. Initially, they planned to have a full extra day of leeway to crack the safe, get out safely, etc. But the federal government, being terrible at everything, bumped up the the nuke time by a full day, leaving them at 1.90 minutes to get everything and get out. So, again, we can go over some of the details if we want later. Long story short, everyone except the daughter dies. Well, almost everyone except the daughter dies. One of the other characters, a character by the name of Van, is locked in the vault by their safe cracker in a last-ditch effort to save his friend's life. Again, a few of our characters get on the helicopter. Zeus attacks them. We get our final fight sequence. Dave Bautista is bitten, so his daughter, in typical tragic zombie story fashion, must put down her own parent.
After they've reconciled.
After there's a bit of reconciliation, sure. And Bautista had saved like $250,000 or something. Most of the money is lost. He saved $250,000. He hands it to her and says, you can do good with this. Save the woman that she went out of her way to save, screwing up parts of the plan, dies in the helicopter crash at the end because of course she does. Save her kids, get them out of the camps. Do good, be better, all that stuff. She is rescued by a helicopter flying entirely too close to the ground zero of a nuclear detonation that close after. They say it's a particularly low yield one, but you're still probably in. She's probably got problems later on in life with health. Mm. Our character of Van comes up out of the vault at ground zero through that man's severe fatal radiation poisoning. He's got weeks to live, right? Maybe months if he's lucky. Anyway, he's got a bunch of the cash out of the vault. He walks out of the ground zero, again, probably dead very, very soon thereafter. But because this is a zombie movie, not quite so much. finds an abandoned house with a car that starts, drives into Utah, finds an airstrip. With his copious amounts of cash, rents a private plane, takes a flight to Mexico. As they're about to land, he starts feeling ill. Turns out he was bitten during a fight with Zeus. And setting up potential sequels as a worse outbreak would take place in a much larger city than Las Vegas, with a potential government response that is not quite as efficient. So that's kind of our story. Mark, I enjoyed parts of this. This story was not exactly what I was expecting, but that's neither good nor bad. That's just relative to my expectations. Where do you want to start? Good, bad, otherwise?
I mean, I can tell you what I liked and what I didn't like, what I think worked and what didn't. And we don't have to make this like a terribly long show. This is not one of those where there's anything going on in this movie beyond the surface. You know, it's a heist, it's a zombie movie, it's a father-daughter reconciliation movie. That is literally one of the reviews I read. It is all of those things, and all of those things are serviced adequately. You know, I like the setup. Go in there. It's a simple enough setup. Get a crew. Go into an impenetrable fortress. Steal the gold. Give it back to me. You can have some of it. Okay. One of the things I liked about this movie was the dialogue exchange between a lot of the characters, where it's just dramatic enough to fit a movie, because, you know, it's not a documentary. You don't want it to be so drab and so real life that it's not interesting, so there has to be some dramatic element to it. But it's not, like, in a lot of these movies, they make the characters sound so stupid and so over the top that they stop sounding human, and now they really are just characters in a bad movie. The strength of Army of the Dead is actually in the finer points, because either you're into zombie splatter or you're not. And if you're not, don't watch this movie. It's not for you. But
if you don't like zombie movies, don't watch a zombie movie.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where it's a zombie movie in the middle of a heist movie, or a heist movie in the middle of a zombie movie, whichever you like. If you like those things are there, and they're done well enough that you'll enjoy them. If you don't watch this movie at all. There's nothing, like, there are some movies where you might not like the genre, you might not like the setup or the setting or whatever, but the themes of the movie are so rich. You know, we were talking about Jupiter's Legacy last night, and I don't want to get off on that. We talked long enough about it yesterday.
We did.
But there's stuff in Jupiter's Legacy that transcends the comic book genre from which the show is firmly entrenched. So, like, even if you're not a superhero fan, I would recommend Jupiter's Legacy for people who are thinkers and want a show that asks interesting questions about morality and ethics and whatnot. Army of the Dead does none of those things. So
this is very much what you see is what you get.
Yeah. It is very much a zombie heist film, and if you like zombie heist films, you'll enjoy it. If not, I wouldn't even watch this. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. For a broad general audience movie on Netflix, which is available to everyone from here to Africa to Australia to Antarctica. It's a very niche film. I was starting to talk about the dialogue. These actually sound like how people would talk to each other in that environment. I made the comparison to Aliens before. When we started, I said, this feels like somebody showed Zack Snyder Aliens and Ocean's 11 in a row, and he was like, what if we mash those two up? And they were like, Zack, stop drinking. No, seriously. What if we combined Aliens with Ocean's 11, but instead of aliens, it's zombies, because I really like zombies. And they were like, you're not doing Superman again, are you? No. Okay, do whatever you want then. That I feel like was the tableside pitch of this movie. And but unlike Aliens, where the dialogue gets a bit silly at times, and like Bill Paxton has some of the most memorable dialogue in Hollywood history, it's also over the top silly. There are lines said by Sigourney Weaver and lines said too, not by Paul Reiser, that are so silly. You know, I quote them to this day because they're memorable, but they're not how real people talk. Army of the Dead actually has very subtle dialogue readings. You don't have a character from like a Michael Bay movie who's just screaming obscenities and catchphrases and nonsense. Nobody does that. Like, even Tig Notaro, who I like as a comedian, she might not be everyone's cup of tea. You know,
Did not even know she was a comedian.
You know, her biggest claim to fame was she had breast cancer, and she had, I think, had one or both of her boobs removed, and she did a lot of material on that, and that kind of became her thing. Tig Notaro I find to be very funny, and I think she has some of the best. Like, she's very sarcastic in the movie, but I find that, like, her sarcasm is embedded well enough in her personality that I could see someone talking that way in that situation.
Yeah.
Bautista, it's so funny because I was watching this and I was thinking about, like, Drax and, like, some of his other performances where they, you know, when you want a solid, you know, muscly guy, but you don't need him to do a lot of dialogue readings, and you kind of just need him to be a presence. Batista's a good get. He has to lead this thing. He has to do a couple of different things. He has to emote regret when dealing with his daughter. He has to emote a degree of like leadership and confidence in dealing with the raid. But again, he's very much the kind of soft-spoken, mumbly military guy that I think they were going for with that character. So I actually think that Bautista was the right guy to cast for that role, and he performed the role adequately enough. Like, I'm not saying he should get an Oscar or anything. He is serviceable in that role, and I had no problem with him. And the stuff with his daughter, I actually really enjoyed. Like, if there's any heart to this movie, if there's anything beyond zombie gore and action, it's this conversation he has with his daughter where he's like, you watched me stab your mom in the head. I thought you were mad at me. And then every time I did come around you after that, you continued to act like you were mad at me. And so I guess I just stopped. Like, what did you want me to do? You seemed like you hated me. And I wasn't going to make you more upset. I didn't know what to do. And he kind of admits that, you know, it was cowardly. But, you know, men are not always known for making the best decisions where emotions are concerned. You know, if the idea is men are not talkers, and they certainly don't know how women think, for the most part, and so he's just reacting to what he's confronted with by this daughter who is conflicted upon conflicted, that was all very believable for me. And, you know, and even the daughter who's like, I've spent so long hating you, I can't just turn that off now because we've had this sort of reconciliatory conversation. Like, I need time. That's a very girl thing to say. It's a very human thing to say. And it's probably one of the best scenes of the movie that don't involve shooting a zombie in the head. It's the most emotional, it's the most emotionally resonant scene in the entire flick. Because the rest of it's just schlock. In terms of, like, set pieces and stuff, it's all fine. You know, Zack Snyder, I've never said Zack Snyder's a bad director when it came to visuals. There are some choices that he makes, color paletting, some, you know, direction of photography that I kind of tilt my head at times. But overall, you know, this wasn't grays upon beiges. You know, it was a colorful. It was a colorful movie.
Yeah, this is a very colorful picture.
The action sequences are readable, and so I mean, it's just you're watching this team go from point A to point B, and like in every other zombie movie you've ever seen, everyone dies, and you're just sort of, you know, waiting around to see how they're going to die. And that's another thing I want to compliment the movie on. Nobody dies stupidly that I could see. Nobody dies making poor decisions. The villain gets his comeuppance, as he rightly should. So maybe like there's an argument to be made that like he died dumb, but he should die dumb. He's the villain.
I wouldn't even say he died dumb.
No, I don't think anyone does.
This is not Paul Reiser running off on his own in the midst of
locking the door and then locking himself in with the alien. By the way,
which is terribly dumb. In this case, the character thinks he has the head of this zombie, which is more, again, that's more valuable than raw cash because you could make more zombies.
Right. Which it wasn't that the whole point of this thing was that they had somehow created this one zombie and they were transporting it from point A to point B, I guess in order to create a biological weapon, and hit by a guy getting a blowjob.
Yeah, something like that. The I don't know if they. It's unclear to me whether they had created this zombie or found it, but that's neither here nor there. It was in the possession of the American military, and representatives of the American military wanted it back.
Yep.
or something of roughly comparable value, because they invested a tremendous amount of time and money into creating this thing, or housing it, or researching it, or again, however the backstory goes, it doesn't really matter. So he thinks he's got that, and he locks the expendable assets who know the truth about what he did behind the die. That's what someone in that circumstance would do. The fact that he then immediately makes it to the surface and is accosted by a zombie tiger is not really his fault in that respect.
Right. Yeah. When you're beset on all sides by enemies, and you have no one to watch your back, that shit's going to happen. So, yeah. So nobody dies dumb. And and you don't have. There's not a lot of.
The closest we get to someone dying dumb is Dieter and eventually Van, who they've dealt with the first wave of these zombies coming down into this hallway where the vault is.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone else grabs what they can and takes off. They know that there's problems coming. You can hear things landing on the top of the elevator that's crashed at the bottom, and they make the decision: okay, do we run or do we go back to the vault and grab the money? They both look at each other and go, the money. They run back, they grab some, and then as they're coming back out, the ceiling gives in, and here come more zombies, and that's where they meet their untimely ends.
I mean, I could make an argument for what was the point of all this if not the money.
No. That's the closest we get.
Yeah.
And those two in that moment making that particular calculation and just being wrong is not the same as someone going, boy, I sure am going to just walk through this. I'm just going to walk through this empty, not empty hallway, but I'm just going to walk. I'm going to talk very loudly. I'm going to shoot off my gun, and oh crap, here come the zombies.
Yeah, there's no. Like, I'm thinking about the pitch meeting for this, and I don't mean like an actual pitch meeting. I mean the Screen Rant skit that you're fond of. And I'm thinking the line, why would that character do that? That doesn't seem like a thing a character would do. It's like, because the movie needs to happen. There's really none of that in the movie that I could tell.
Not a whole lot, no.
So it's a solid script with some readable action sequences, some very fun color paletting, and at least one emotionally resonant scene. The acting is all adequate to good. None of it's great, but it's all serviceable and or good.
To the credit, you said none of it's great. That's very true. None of it's awful.
Yeah,
which is kind of a rarity.
Yeah, it's a very middle of the road. If you like it, you're gonna like it. If you don't, you shouldn't watch it. That's really all I have to say about this. I mean, it was how long was this thing? It was 2 hours. It was almost 2.5 hours, and I wasn't bored at any given time. I was interested to see what was going to happen. I was rooting for the characters. Nobody in this movie, other than the villain who should be, seemed like a bag of shit either. Like, that's the other thing I have. Like, if you watch Ocean's 11, these are fun characters you would want to hang out with, and so you're cheering for them to get away with stealing. And also, the guy they're stealing from is a shitty person. So so while you're cheering for a bad thing to happen because stealing is wrong, given the characters in the setup,
right? Tell me.
Look, Churchy, it's right there in the Bible. No stealing. The bad guy is bad. The good guys are charming. You cheer for the good guys. Here is kind of the same thing. The one bad guy embedded with them gets his comeuppance, and so you say, yay, he's eaten by a zombie tiger who looks pretty cool. Everybody else is not bad. They were hired to do a job. They're soldiers, mercenaries, etc. Even the daughter, who I was like, I'm going to hate this daughter character, and she was
she kind of butts up against that a couple of times.
Yeah, she comes close to the edge, but then they dial her back to where she's not a shrew idiot bitch.
Yeah.
And a big part of that is her being able to at least partially reconcile with her father, so that in the end, with the big emotional payoff where she has to blow him away because he's a zombie now, you're not like, I don't know why you're sad about this. Like, I got, they had done enough work with the characters to where I'm like, I get now why you're sad you had to shoot him other than the act of shooting something. So
I suppose the only other really dumb thing that a character does, and when I say dumb, I mean purely in the logical sense, not necessarily in the sense that it's not set up, when she sneaks off on her own to go...
She wasn't there for the money. She was there to rescue this one person, and she was very single-minded about it. But I even like that with her and Bautista, where she's like, take me or I'll just go on my own, and it's on you if I die, I guess. And he's like, you're an adult woman. I can't stop you. God damn it. It's all, and it's not said outright, which is nice, but it's definitely implied in the dialogue and in the acting, where he's like, why won't you just listen to me? which I really enjoyed.
And to be fair, this is his job. Like, I know what I'm doing here. You really should, like, this isn't me stepping outside my comfort zone to try and get you to do something. I'm not telling you, not to be overly dismissive of this, but I'm not telling you how to do your TikTok dances. Don't tell me how to infiltrate a zombie horde.
Just so you can keep going. That's really it. I have no major complaints about it, other than it's not a nothing movie. That's a whole other category of film that we tend to discuss on here, which is this is just a giant nothing. It's not nothing. It's popcorn entertainment with no radical major flaws in it. It's just adequate popcorn fun. I'm done.
Yeah, for the record, when we talk about nothing movies, they're movies that, like, they exist, but usually they're bad. But they're not entertainingly bad. Mm-hmm. They're just, I mean, look, I think the big nothing movie that I kind of remember ranting about was the Four Stick movie, which is such a nothing. That is so much nothing. Like, I walked out of that theater for that movie knowing that time had passed, that images were projected onto a screen, and that I watched all of it. But nothing happened. No, you're entirely correct. This isn't that. It's adequate. If you think that you will enjoy watching a zombie movie with this setup, you probably will enjoy this movie. It's not going to stick with you, and I don't just mean like as a profound piece of media. No, there are plenty of non-profound pieces of media that stick with you for one reason or the other. Nothing about this is going to stick with you. It's not especially interesting. But if you saw the trailer, if you like zombie movies, and you think, yeah, sure, I think I'll have a good time with that, you probably will. You mentioned something about Bautista, and I want to... He's the correct choice to play this, to kind of carry this movie, which I think is true. Batista's a slightly better actor than he's given credit for. Hang on. Maybe that's because people give him no credit.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, before you go any further with that, let me be clear so that I'm not being misunderstood. I don't think he's a bad actor. I think he's got limitations. I don't think he can stretch very far. But if you cast him the right way, I think he can pull off certain kinds of dramatic roles. What you needed here is a regretful father who can also kick ass and shoot zombies. They kind of found the perfect guy for that.
They did, especially if they wanted to keep it understated. If you wanted to go bombastic, then there's better choices. But with the totality of what they wanted, he was the right guy.
I don't think bombastic works in this movie. I think you needed understand, and none of the characters are bombastic. And considering the scenario, I think that would have made the movie overwhelming.
Unless you wanted to completely retool this to be a bombastic movie, I'm with you. I mean, the sequence where they're describing... This is where we get most of the shots from the trailer. Most of this trailer the trailer for this is comprised of either the opening credit scroll where Vegas is kind of firebombed as people are getting in and out, or the kind of expectation sequence when they're talking through their plan.
Mm-hmm.
And it is so very much not that, if that's all you know of this movie. Which, again, is neither good nor bad, simply the way it is. Yeah, I think one of the other things that Bautista did that I rather enjoyed, and it's a smaller part, but him as that the opening replicant in Blade Runner 2049.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very dramatic role in that respect, and he handles himself quite well. You know, I'm with you in that he's probably fairly limited, but if you understand that and you kind of know what you want out of him, he's a very capable actor for stuff like this.
I've met the guy in person. like Batista was probably the most like bombastic and overacting and like broad of a character when he was a heel in his late run, where him and John Cena were feuding.
Yeah,
He was really over the top then, but that's probably the most I've ever seen him stretch. Meeting him in real life when he rolled with us at my jiu-jitsu class, and we were all kind of just sitting around talking. He is a very soft-spoken, kind of mellow dude. Like,
if you've ever seen any of the interviews that he does, yeah, he is very soft-spoken. He is very kind of, I hate to say, like chill or down to earth, because I don't know how true that is, but seems very, kind of grounded.
Mm-hmm.
If you can kind of get past the tattoos and the fact that he is jacked, he's a very regular person.
New Year's Eve, we watched a handful of movies, one of which was My Spy. And, it's a kid's movie. My kids enjoyed it. My wife and I enjoyed it. The reason I'm bringing it up is he's the lead in it. And, he actually, because I was thinking about, The Rock and John Cena, how they can be very broad and over the top. And if you want bombastic...
They're very big.
Yeah. If you want bombastic in your movie, you can do... John Cena and The Rock are perfectly good at doing that. But I was thinking about, when, both John Cena and The Rock had very similar paths in Hollywood, to where, in order to get themselves seen out of the box of what they had started with and to get more roles and to get Hollywood comfortable with them, they started doing a lot of kid stuff on a lot of comedies. The Rock did The Game Plan and the Tooth Fairy.
The Rock did that series of 4 movies that were all with Disney.
Yeah. And suddenly, he got, and then he started getting a lot of roles from that point on. Hollywood was more comfortable with him. John Cena practically worked for Nickelodeon for years.
Still does.
Yeah, so he's hosting Wipeout now with this, I can't remember her name, but she's a large black woman comedian. And if you want, John Cena could absolutely, we'll see how he does in F9 as the villain, where he has to be serious and not be jokey jokester. But
no, he can be jokey jokester. It's F9.
But John Cena is very, very much takes to comedy easily.
Yeah, he is. Have you seen any of the? Again, there's a degree to which F9 might change this reputation, but if you've seen any of Cena's other attempts at action movies, they are not good.
No, he sucks.
He is not,
or sucks.
You would be it's shocking, because especially if you watched him wrestling and whatnot, because he looks physically like an action hero. And I don't just mean that because he was jacked at the time. He's lost a lot of muscle mass lately, especially now that he's mostly retired. But his the jawline, the hairline, the steely look, you would look at that guy and you'd think action star, and then you watch his action movies, and I don't know how much of it is on. Again, Fast 9 will tell us a bit about this, whether or not it's him.
I think the height of his action movies, because the way he was used, was Bumblebee. And I'm not saying I don't want to relitigate that movie. What I'm saying is that was the best action role for him. He does his best work when he actually has to tuck it in and be reserved. When he has to be serious military guy, he actually pulls that off very well. He had, there's a reason why he started off his wrestling career as a robot, because he actually seems to feel most comfortable being a robot. So, all right, I get it. So back to Batista, and when I was trying to link that to My Spy. They needed Batista to be charming but understated, and boy, is that his bag.
Yeah, he's real. I mean, even if you think back to his wrestling days, what got him over as the next big thing? He was actually the quiet badass opposite the bombastic personalities of Triple H, Ric Flair, and Randy Orton. Those guys were all very broad, very big, very talky, and here's Batista just kind of being a little bit quieter, but being able to make his points and, being a physical specimen.
Yeah, he's the kind of guy that whispers menacingly to you.
Yeah.
Everyone else is yelling and screaming and saying, that doesn't work for me, brother. And then there's just Batista.
And then here's Jake the Snake going, I don't have to yell at you to make you pay attention to me.
Yep, there's Batista whispering in your ear, make it gayer.
So, point being, he does a good job. He does a really good job here. I mean, again, nothing nothing that would really kind of break the mold or whatnot. But this is one of his first. This is one of his. It's not his literal first, but it's one of his first leading roles.
Right.
And he certainly does his job very, very adequately. I hate to say very, very adequately, as though that's some kind of backhanded compliment. But you can think of other people who maybe would have been in this spot and would not have been able to carry this movie with this tone the way that he does.
There's so much incompetence in Hollywood. Adequate's actually a compliment. Hey,
that is very true.
You showed up to work and did your job properly. Bravo. Not every guy that comes up to bat's going to hit it out of the park. Sometimes you just need a guy to hit a single. Just make contact.
Well, I've mentioned this before, but if you listen to Anthony Hopkins, the now 2-time Oscar winner, his philosophy about acting is incredibly similar. It's not that hard. Show up, know your lines, hit your marks.
Yeah.
The number of people who can't seem to do that.
Well, I mean, and this is why when we have these reviews, I talk a lot about direction, because I have directed. I'm not a Hollywood director. I've never done anything that has made any money other than be a social worker. Let us be clear about that. I am not bragging. I am talking about a part of my life. I was able to direct a handful of scenes and small plays and stuff like that during my college years. And, having been in that position, having directed actors will do what you want them to do. And if you need them to do something different because you're looking for a different kind of performance, it's on the director to draw that out of the actor. Now, sometimes the actors just aren't capable, and then you have a problem with casting. But other than that, I mean, whatever shows up on screen, that's kind of on the director. They're the ones, and if everything is whatever line reading you gave, whatever first take you got is what you're going to run with because you're in a hurry to finish this thing, that's also on the director.
Yeah, the ultimate end product is on the director and the editor, ultimately. And that will depend on how much the director is a part of the editing process. Some of them get done shooting, hand it to the editor, and say,
"I'm going to Disney.
I've got another project to get working on. Here's my notes on tone and whatnot, and knock yourself out."
Yep.
Sometimes that is the studio's call in terms of, great, you wrapped shooting. Now stay away from the editing bay, and we'll let you know how things turn out.
Give us your reels. Now lock the door and change the locks. Hey, hi, George Lucas. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, so that, or in some cases, you have a egomaniacal actor who will lock the director out of the editing bay, Edward Norton.
Anything else?
Have you heard that about American History X?
Yes, we've actually told that story on here.
God.
Any other thoughts about this movie? Because if not, I want to quick hit the soundtrack, and then we'll move on.
Well, since you brought up the soundtrack, Zack Snyder has a long history of having really good choices for music to put into his films. Mm-hmm. Not just the original score, which is usually quite good. Mm-hmm. Not always, but usually. But he's also really good about finding the right song and usually the right version, of that song to kind of set the overall scene and tone for the movie. I mean, the opening bit of Watchmen, where he sets his montage from the creation of Dr. Manhattan or whatnot forward to, much as I'm not a fan of Bob Dylan, set that to Bob Dylan's The Times They Are Changing, it's a stroke of genius to have that little touch in there. Mm-hmm. And he does kind of the same thing here. So, Mark, if only there were a streaming service where I could find all of this in one convenient location, and preferably something that wouldn't cost me any money, because I am a cheap man, and you know this about me.
Well, I'll tell you what, Robert. There were some great song selections, as you just talked about, in this movie. When Van, I guess his name is crawling out of the vault, and it's the aftermath of the nuclear explosion, and it's set to Zombies, the acoustic version by the Cranberries. That's great. And it made me want to go back and listen to the acoustic version of Zombies by the Cranberries. So if you are like me and you hear a song in a movie and you're like, I remember that, I want to go listen to it, what better way to do that than to go on AmazonMusic.com and stream all of your favorite songs or songs you've heard in movies recently. And you can do that by clicking on our link at getamazonmusic.com/W2M network. That's getamazonmusic.com/W2M network. And have a free 30 days of Amazon Music on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network and W2M. You can hear Do You Really Want to Hurt Me, Robert Winfree, performed by the Culture Club. You can hear Nightlife, performed by Elvis Presley. You could hear the aforementioned Viva Las Vegas by Richard Cheese and Alison Crow. You could hear Thea Gilmore's take on Bad Moon Rising, Si Senor's Control Machete, The End by the Ravenettes, which I'm pretty sure was by the Doors originally, but they're not getting credit for it in this article that I'm reading from. Either way, if you listen to the music and you're like, I want to go hear this stuff now, or it reminds you of something else you might want to listen to, like maybe you were watching the original cut of Justice League and you heard the Concrete Blonde version of the Richard Cohen song, which name now escapes me, and you're like the guys from Red Letter Media, and you're like, hey, this version sucks. I want to hear the original Richard Cohen version. Just type in Richard Cohen into AmazonMusic.com, and you can listen to all the Richard Cohen music you want. Isn't that wonderful? So get AmazonMusic.com/W2M network for a free 30 days of Amazon Music.
We got a link in the description below for whatever platform you happen to be listening to this on. Give it a click. Enjoy it. It's free. Have it on us. Let them know we sent you. It helps us out. It helps you out. There is no downside.
It's win-win. All right. Last words, and then we're moving on.
Again, if you think you'll probably enjoy this, you probably will. Knock yourself out. If you don't think this looks all that enjoyable, you will not enjoy it. Don't watch it. This isn't going to stick with me in any real way. It is, I don't want to say frivolous, but it's very, very shallow. It's very, very surface level.
I'm glad Zack Snyder got to make it. We bagged so much on Zack Snyder because of what happened with DC that I kind of like, just please make your own stuff. You're actually a very talented guy. Stop making other people's things.
You know, there is one thing from this movie that it's never addressed, it's never explained, and makes me wonder if it's just was an odd choice that was supposed to set something up, if there was stuff that got cut that explained it, if they're setting up for a sequel. I mean, obviously, all zombie movies set up for a sequel.
Well, there's stuff coming out. There's like an anime, there's a prequel, there's all kinds of... This apparently is now going to be the Army of the Dead universe. And This is me sticking my finger in my mouth like a gun and pulling the trigger.
Fair enough. But we all know you're going to decide to make a synergistic week of content around each and every one of those.
Only if you guys agree. Only if you agree.
Since when have you ever? But some of the zombies, I think some of the alphas in particular, they had like light, and when I say light, glowing blue eyes, and their brain matter came out blue instead of the normal red. The first time I saw it, there's one of the hallway sequences when they're trying to set up for their escape after the alphas all attack the casino. I thought the guy shot a robot. Like the way it went down with the blue eyes and kind of the sparks going off when he shoots him in the head, and then the blue stuff coming out. I went, wait a minute, what? Is that a robot? Where are the robot zombies? And then again, it happens to a couple of others later, and it's just, their brain matter is blue instead of red or pink, and I don't know if this is some indicator of them being, higher order zombies. I don't know if it's a byproduct of some chemical process, but it threw me off. And being a detail oriented person, when I get thrown off by stuff like that and never get an explanation, it bothers me a little bit.
Fair enough.
But again, this is. You kind of hit the nail on the head. This is superficial, popcorn entertainment designed to kill time. It's not going to stick with you. It's not especially memorable in any capacity. But if you think you'll have fun watching this movie, you probably will, and there's worse ways to kill 2.5 hours.
If they had released it in theaters this weekend, it would have easily won the weekend. I could see, this getting a mass audience. But hey, development hell, Netflix, streaming, 2021, pandemic. Here's the news.
And now, I'm up at News Flash.
And speaking of streaming services and the pandemic, AT&T announces $43 billion deal to merge Warner Media with Discovery. Under the agreement, AT&T said it would receive an aggregate amount of $43 billion in a combination of cash, debt, and Warner Media's retention of certain debt. Discovery shareholders would own 29% of the new company. Telecom giant AT&T announced Monday a deal to combine its content unit, Warner Media, with Discovery, paving the way for one of Hollywood's biggest studios to compete with media giants Netflix and Disney. Begun, the streaming war has.
For the record... Okay, sorry, you're going to continue. Go ahead.
Under the agreement, AT&T will unwind its $85 billion acquisition of Time Warner, which closed just under 3 years ago, and form a new media company with Discovery. The deal would create a new business separate from AT&T that would be valued at as much as $150 billion, including debt, according to the Financial Times. AT&T said it would receive an aggregate amount. Okay, we've already covered that, and nobody cares. If approved by regulators, the deal effectively reverses AT&T's years-long plan to combine content and distribution in a vertically integrated company. The company said the deal is expected to close in the middle of 2022. AT&T said Discovery President and CEO David Zaslav will lead the new company, which will have a new name announced in coming days. The board would consist of 13 members. Okay. It's super exciting to combine such historic brands with world-class journalism and iconic franchises under one roof and unlock so much value and opportunity, Zaslav said, adding that AT&T and Discovery's assets are better and more valuable together. All right, so just kind of skipping ahead here. AT&T owns CNN, HBO, and Warner Brothers after it acquired Time Warner since it renamed to Warner Media. Discovery channels include Animal Planet, TLC, and Discovery Channel. So the short version of this is that if you've got HBO Max, you're about to get Animal Planet, TLC, and Discovery Channel stuff as well.
Hang on. There's a lot more than just those three. The Discovery Plus streaming service offered, you mentioned, again, obviously Discovery, Animal Planet, TLC, Food Network, History Channel, Lifetime, so all the Lifetime Christmas movies and whatnot. And there's a couple of other channels that went along with that. There was a very real argument that the Discovery Plus bundle was one of the most bang for your buck streaming options available, given the content it provided. Mm-hmm. You blend that with HBO Max, and you would have a very, very serious player in that space.
Yep. So you have Disney, who has Lucasfilm, Marvel, Pixar, and National Geographic. You have Netflix, which is spending billions of dollars on mostly Sony pictures at this point, but other stuff as well. A lot of original content and a lot of, they're licensing a lot of movies from other studios. Hey, you know what we should also talk about? The possible purchase of Amazon, the possible purchase of MGM Studios by Amazon.
That seems kind of inevitable at this point.
It was one of the things we talked about earlier this year, because MGM had announced months ago that they were putting themselves up for auction, and we had kind of surmised that from what everyone tells me, we threw Disney out there as an option because Disney was just kind of buying everything. But I think somebody pointed out to me recently that Disney legally isn't allowed to buy another company.
Yeah, Disney is going to run up against some antitrust monopoly-based laws about their giant foothold in the entertainment in that space.
So that left NBC Universal and AT&T / Warner Brothers ostensibly left because Sony is actually also, for a while there, they were talking about selling off their movie studio, and instead of just decided,
well, Sony's going to wind up selling off. Give it another couple of years. After a few more movies crater, they'll be back in that particular position. They'll sell off a few of the IPs back to Disney / Marvel, and the rest of their stuff will be acquired by some other group.
I mean, what I was going to say is, in the interim, Sony has they've become like content creation and have decided to just sell to Netflix or some other streamer for distribution. Like they have more or less abandoned and they've got a few hot pictures coming up like Ghostbusters and whatnot, but by and large, like they just decided, fuck it. We'll make the movies and sell them to a streamer, and then at least we'll know we won't have a Ghostbusters 2016 debacle anymore. We'll know we'll know what our profit margins are, other than gambling like we've been doing. Which when you've got a track record like Sony has for the past decade, probably not a bad idea. As for MGM, their big IP is the James Bond franchise, which James Bond has a movie coming out this year. Knock on wood.
In theory, it was supposed to come out last year.
It was supposed to come out a couple of times this year. My point being that, like, if Amazon is able to grab MGM from the clutches of possibly other competitors like NBC Universal and AT&T Time Warner, that's also another really big get, and it makes Amazon that much more competitive. This move by HBO, it's like every time one of these stories breaks, like you start to see like Disney or somebody else sort of take the lead in the streaming wars, and then something happens, you're like, oh my God, that's a game changer. So like the most recent one before the AT&T Discovery thing and before Amazon MGM, which hasn't been finalized yet, it's just rumored to be happening.
Yeah. Again, that is very much pending. The an FCC. No, I'm the. Not the. No.
Federal Trade Communication.
Yeah, that's it. FTC.
So, but like the just a few months ago, the big game changer was WWE doing away with its network and licensing its content to the Peacock, which is NBC Universal. And so it was like NBC Universal was this little like peon. Nobody cared about it. Like they were like, "Oh, we're gonna do Punky Brewster and Saved by the Bell," and everyone kind of gave a who gives a shit. Like, but we have The Office. I'm like, yeah, and what do you got that's new? And they were like, "How about WWE?" Holy crap! And now the new holy crap thing is this AT&T Discovery, which would really, it's been kind of a horse race between Disney and AT&T. And every time Disney starts to make some headway, HBO Max decides, or AT&T Warner Brothers says, all of our first-run movies are going to HBO Max in 2021. You want to see Godzilla and Kong from the comfort of your own home and not get a pandemic? You got it, Bucky. And then there's NBC Universal just kind of lagging behind all of them, going, I like cheese. WWE, huh? Punky Brewster? Nobody cares. And somewhere in the middle of all that is Netflix and Amazon. Everyone says, like, Netflix and Disney are the ones that are really in competition, but, I don't know. I'm seeing this as more of a race between Disney and HBO Max at this point, even though, Netflix might have more subscribers, and maybe as far as metrics go, that's the one you want to go with. But in terms of reliable content and, content magnets, that right now is the tie between Disney and AT&T. What do you think?
Objectively, yeah. I mean, look, I've said this before, I'll say it again. Most of the Disney Plus original stuff, I have, like, tepid interest in the vast majority of it.
No, but you're also not a parent, a child, or a girl.
I'm perfectly willing to stipulate that. How dare you assume my identity?
Sorry, I don't mean to mansplain at you, but I mean, you're also. I mean, like when you think about like Disney trying to seduce you, like we've got Star Wars, and Robert Winfree takes out his dick and pisses right in the face of Star Wars. Like, all right, wipe the urine away. We've got Marvel, and Robert Winfree takes down his pants and shits in front of you. Like,
hold on. That's not accurate. My response to "We've got Marvel" is, okay, so you're batting about what at this point?
I prefer the image of you just taking a shit in front of a Marvel executive. That's what I think of your product.
All right, fair enough. Whatever works. Whatever sprinkles your donut.
Whatever my personal fetish is today. And then it's like, okay, but we've got Disney originals, and Robert Winfree just punches him in the face.
Again, I've seen their slate of upcoming stuff, and it's not a bit. It doesn't really appeal to me. I said when we reviewed WandaVision, I had mild interest in Falcon and the Winter Soldier before the first episode aired. After the first episode aired, I didn't watch it live, but I saw people talking about it, and I went, oh no.
Now, contrast that with HBO Max, where I think, now the same salesman trying to seduce you is like, got Godzilla versus Kong, and at least there's mild curiosity there. Got Mortal Kombat, all right, more curiosity there.
Hang on, two things I had mild curiosity about until I saw them.
Well, why would you have curiosity after you saw something? It doesn't make logical sense. You're curious to. In other words, if you only had to pick one streaming service, the clear choice for you would be HBO Max. Not Disney has got almost nothing you're interested in. But again, not a parent, not a child, not a girl.
In terms of upcoming original, that's the other thing about HBO Max. They don't make a lot of original stuff yet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, they are part of the Warner Brothers or whatever this merger makes them eventually.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the library that they have to draw from. But there's not been an HBO Max exclusive television show, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, that might change in the future. It might not. But it's something to kind of keep in mind. I can't wait for their sequel to The Wire, set in 2017.
Yeah. No, it'll be set in the underwater city of New Orleans. Now, listen. For anyone screaming, but what about Hulu? And what about Apple Plus? Two things. One, Hulu's part of Disney. Doesn't count.
Yeah.
Number one, when I say Disney, I am including Hulu in that. Number two, Apple Plus is so niche and has almost no known IP. It has almost all original programming. Also, you kind of have to be an Apple user. Like, if you were to rank popularity of streaming services, that has to be at the bottom of the major ones.
I didn't even know it was still a thing.
Yeah, Apple Plus still a thing. They've got the peanuts. That's what they've got.
That's a very valuable IP for them to have, but it's going to get sold off to somebody else.
All right. Anything else about this? Talking streaming. This, we started off with AT&T and Discovery, and sort of dovetailed into the greater, part 7 of our streaming conversation, ongoing streaming conversation. And you got anything else?
No, it's definitely something we'll be paying attention to going forward. And since we talk the news when we do these segments, if we have a second Damn You Hollywood in the week, instead of rehashing the money, we talk the news. And this was certainly very newsworthy.
Indeed. All right. And now the critical review.
Are you ready? No! I said, are you ready?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Well, first things last, it has a 72% fresh rating on the Tomato Meter and a 79% audience score, so critics and general folks pretty much like this movie. But I'm sure, as we find with most of the critical reviews that we do, there were some critics that either didn't get it or hate their life and hated having to review this movie for their job, and so let's get to some of those now. Paul Whittington of Irish Independent. The wisecracks the crew trade during their extended killing spree are not funny. Okay, I didn't think they were cracking all that wise. That was one of the things I liked about it. Snyder fails to restrain his slow-mo tick. Okay. And
hang on. I would actually disagree with that. Don't get me wrong. There is the slow-mo bit here that's kind of typical of Snyder, but it's really not as pervasive as you might think.
No, this wasn't Justice League. I'll tell you that, where the whole movie's in slow motion.
Pretty much.
And one emerges from the wreckage of Las Vegas none the wiser and slightly stupider.
Well, that's universally true of going to Las Vegas, sir.
Matthew Razik of Flixus.com. Army of the Dead is sadly just not that special.
Oh, God, why? You, sir, don't understand that special by definition means not the norm. If everything's special, nothing's special. Dumbass.
Yeah, I would say this movie stands out because it's not, especially mind-bending or challenging. Like, it's rare that we just get a perfectly cooked burger. Perfectly yummy burger. And, like, that's something that we should deride. It really bothers me about modern criticism.
It's a bunch of idiots who think that everything should be super special all the time.
Like, it has to be glop or filet mignon, and I'm like, wow, there's more food out there than all that. And if all I had to eat was filet mignon, I'd kill myself.
These are people who don't understand just the fundamental. Like, what makes things special is in no small part their difference. If everything's the same, even if everything is kind of the same at a high level, it's not. You lose interest really quickly because everything's the same. Familiarity breeds contempt for a reason.
Larry Carroll of Looper. While there are some inspired moments that will make you chuckle and or look away from the screen in repulsion, the flick is predominantly brain dead.
That's a very bad pun. And again, not everything needs to be a profound commentary on the human condition.
Sean Burns of North Shore Movies. Individual set pieces are spectacular, but this meandering, sometimes mournful affair is more interested in world building and backstory than the task at hand.
You, sir, have never spent a lot of time. Like, if anything, there's a lack of world building. Again, there's plenty of questions that we all have that we would love to see. That if you're interested, you might want to see more of. This movie doesn't get bogged down in those. If anything, a few of them could be better explained.
Sean Collier of Box Office Profits. The lowliest one-legged ghoul in this bloodbath possesses more grace than the script. All right. Go for a walk, sir.
Yeah, really. I mean, look, this is not we mentioned it. This is not an especially well-written movie if we're talking about, like, if we're talking, and I don't even mean, like, special, like genuinely special, awesome types of scripts. This one's just fairly kind of generic in that respect.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it does have somewhat odd peaks and valleys, all things considered, but it's certainly not this unwieldy monstrosity of bumbling your way from scene to scene.
Johnny Oleksinski of New York Post top critic. The best aspects of Army of the Dead are hindered by undue excess. Sir, I have seen many a zombie flick for the weenie that I am portrayed to be. This was not excessive. Okay, this doesn't even rise to the level of The Fucking Boys excessive.
Yeah, this is really not even if we're just talking about the director's stylistic eccentricities potentially being leaned into and being a bit self-indulgent, this isn't even the most self-indulgent thing Snyder's ever done, by a long shot.
Are people forgetting The Watchmen, which was, like, wildly overindulgent in his particular picadillos and styles?
Or, his cut of Justice League, which again, I certainly enjoyed by and large, but is definitely because he got full autonomy to just do whatever he wanted with that. It definitely leaned. This one isn't even as indulgent for Snyder's style as, say, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was for Tarantino.
Kevin Brackett disagrees with you. Kevin Brackett of ReviewSTL.com says, all of Snyder's worst tendencies are on display. Style often comes over substance, and you really feel it. Yeah, buddy. Have you seen Batman v Superman?
Probably not. This guy is... Have you seen Sucker Punch, sir? These idiots.
Our dumb culture. Akil Aurora of Gadgets 360. Netflix's Army of the Dead is a failed genre homecoming for Zack Snyder after 17 years.
It's really not. Like, you're just a person who doesn't like certain types of movies, and that's very, very obvious. It's a genre pick. Oh.
Walter Chaw of Film Freak Central. A remorseless Braven ripoff of Aliens. Woohoo! I win! I beat the smart kids! I beat the smart kids! You can laugh to yourself that I'm now quoting Ralph. And what that implies about me. Go on, laugh to yourself. Are you done laughing? Did I lose you entirely?
Not in the technological sense.
A remorseless. Do we need to do the bit again? Like,
Oh no,
you...
I heard you.
Okay. My cat's breath smells like. Moving on. It smells like burning. Why do I identify with Ralph of all people?
Why do people run away from me?
I choose you. Anyway.
For the record, I do not choose you, Mark.
I would think not. I'm Ralph of The Simpsons. You're more Skinner.
I'm loosely offended by that, but okay.
What do you want me to call you?
I don't know. I've never thought about what Simpsons character I am.
Well, we'll do it in the chat and offend everybody. How does that sound? I called myself fucking Ralph. Get over yourself. A remorseless, brazen ripoff of Alien.
And if I'd called myself Skinner, then we'd be having a different conversation. But you called me Skinner. I didn't call you Ralph.
That's okay. I also, in imitating Jason, implied that he was Cletus the slack-jawed yokel. Maybe I'm just an asshole. Take 3. A remorseless, brazen ripoff of Aliens, down to outfitting a monster-killing badass exactly like Jeanette Goldstein's Vasquez and to cribbing a few lines from James Cameron's script wholesale.
No, like Vasquez had infinitely more personality than that woman.
Yeah. And
that's not even close.
And Aliens is like one of my favorite movies of all time. I know a lot of the dialogue in that movie by heart. I don't recall any character quoting Vasquez or Hicks for that matter.
If he's saying cribbing, I think he's that doesn't mean that word does not mean what you think it means the way you're using it. I will give you inspired by, and
sure.
To be fair, being inspired by one of the best sci-fi action horror movies of all time is not a bad thing. But unless you're going to you're trying to say this is something like one step removed from plagiarism, and it's really not that.
No, not by a long shot. Rafael Montemayor of IGN Movies. Well, it does some fascinating things with the zombie genre that we haven't seen since George A. Romero, Army of the Dead, ends up bogged down by its own self-importance and forgets how fun it's supposed to be.
No. Oh, God. You, sir, when was the apart from Zombieland and Shaun of the Dead, what was the last? Even Shaun of the Dead's not a fun movie. It's a comedy, but it's not a Rick-rolling good time necessarily.
No, it's a survival zombie movie. People are like on the run from a zombie horde.
Apart from those two, when was the last time you had zombie movies? Aren't fun. They are somewhat by definition tragedies. It's just if you can play around with that, you can make it a bit more comedic.
Like Zombieland was funny, but I wouldn't have called it fun. Again, it's a survival picture.
I mean, the first Zombieland also features the heartbreaking moment when you realize Woody Harrelson's character is just kind of not in denial, but hiding the fact that he lost his infant son when the zombie outbreak happened.
Yeah. Jeanette Katsoulis of New York Times, top critic. Its grim images of quarantined refugees and rotting hordes summon a bleakness at odds with its most fun creation, an elite zombie power couple with functioning brains. Snyder should have probably given them final cut. Are you mad that he just didn't make a movie about refugees?
Probably. It's the New York Times, probably.
Yeah. We'll read a couple more of these and then we'll call it a night.
You don't understand. I write for a former newspaper in the New York Times. How could I possibly... I must couch this in the most ridiculous terms possible. Just bite me, you sanctimonious, self-important, quasi-literate jackasses.
Rohan Nahar, speaking of quasi-literate jackasses, of the Hindustan Times, who we often...
Hold on. That might be, to be fair to this gentleman, that could very well be a translation issue between Hindi and English.
Maybe. But we read enough of his stuff and disagree with most of it that I'm starting to think maybe he's just dumb. The writing and directing in Zack Snyder films, especially when he insists on doing it himself, is more lifeless than any zombie that has ever been put on screen. His heart remains, as always, in the right place, but his storytelling gets in the way.
I would I would kind of grant you that Snyder's not the best writer. That's very true. But I really don't think that it results in this lifeless product that he's kind of exhibiting here. If nothing else, this is a step back from some of his overly complicated writing exercises to a very straightforward one. And you might say, "Well, I wanted more." Fine, but that's not the same problem that he's exhibited in the past. It just means he's not a great writer.
And here's the thing. Yes, he wrote the story, but the screenplay was him, Shea Hatton, and Joby Harold.
So, so let's spread a bit of the blame around as far as that goes.
Yeah. Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat. In fairness, there is plenty that Snyder didn't lift directly from James Cameron, again, and that material sticks out for an entirely different reason. Uniform stupidity.
No. God. What is with these people?
Ryan Silverstein of Movie John.
Hold on. I'm stuck on that for just a second.
Okay.
You, sir, have clearly either not seen a lot of stupid movies or just think that a stupid movie is anything that you don't quite like. I, sir, have seen stupid movies. A lot of them, in point of fact, frequently to review them. This is not a stupid movie. It doesn't even have a lot of abject stupidity within it. It's just not especially exceptional. That doesn't make it stupid.
All right, I'm going to read one more of these. This is actually a fresh review, but it's so bad that I need you to yell at this person.
All right.
Kathia Woods of Cup of Soul. She gave it a 6 out of 10 and said, "This is the line of the entire review," and I might have to read the full review to see if any of this is, maybe she needs Grammarly. Who knows? But Vegas ain't the same anymore in Army of the Dead.
That's... I'm sorry? I mean, if nothing else, it's hard to tell the difference between Las Vegas full of zombies and Las Vegas naturally, but that's just wrong on many levels.
So let's see if there was a better line they could have taken from
that
this.
as your stinger.
Yeah, Zack Snyder is bringing us the first true content of the summer for Army of the Dead, fresh off the release of Justice League. The planet is in shambles. No, it isn't. It's one fucking city.
Very expressly not the planet.
It's one city in a desert, a very confined area. I don't know if I want to read the rest of this. She clearly didn't know what movie she was watching. There is a chance to obtain a pass and a substantial payout, but the path is littered with zombies. We've arrived in Las Vegas, where the bright lights have been turned off. The town has become desolate, and the undead now run the streets. Okay, then she goes into like a plot synopsis. More plot synopsis.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the criteria for Rotten Tomatoes is that not letting people be not featuring reviewers, is people who are overly reliant on plot synopsis in their writing. I wonder how many of these morons were grandfathered in.
Army of the Dead is a film that is all about action, adrenaline, and having a good time. See, that would have been fine. I wouldn't be bashing this person if they'd used that line. This film
it's not true, but okay.
The film succeeds because of this band of misfits, which includes zombie hunters, wise asses. Again, with the wise asses thing. Like, did you hear a lot of cracking wise in this?
Apart from Peters, who's just sarcastic more than wisecracking.
A spiritual warrior and a top-notch safecracker. The casting of Bautista as Scott Ward was fantastic. He's the boss, but not exactly polished. Yeah, we said that too. Some of the melodrama between him and Kate should have been cut. Oh, for fuck's sake.
Hang on. I think when I say if this person means cut entirely, I would take issue with that. If you mean there's a few different sequences that could have been trimmed a little bit better, I might have. At 2.5 hours, there was room for parts of this movie to be shortened. I'd have to go back and rewatch it and kind of really timestamp out what I think could be trimmed. But there was some room for some further editing to tighten this up, I think, is a fair observation.
Here, you'll like this line. Marianne Peters, played by Tig Notaro, plays a bumbling but competent helicopter pilot. Normally a job like this would go to a male, so it was refreshing to see a woman in such an unbalanced role. We're still on this, huh? we're still mad that girls don't get choice parts, really, in 2021? All
well,
right.
Look, sure your daughter in another few years will be writing movie reviews for the school paper saying the same thing.
There were 9 women and one man in this movie, and that was one man too many. Fucking F.
and there was a romantic subplot, F minus.
Wasted too much. So I was forced to review this romance movie, and quite frankly, there was too much kissing for my taste. Thanks, Lily. All right. I think when we start making fun of my daughter, it's time to end the podcast. So that wraps it up for our review of Army of the Dead. We've had a busy day today. MODOK on Hulu just dropped, and so to coincide with that, we reviewed...
I haven't had a chance to listen to your review since it just dropped. But is that as bad as I think it is?
I compared it to Death of Hawkman. You figure it out.
All right, bad. I was not going unless you gave it a glowing recommendation. I had no interest. But if you, again, with an appropriate recommendation from people whose opinions I respect, even if I disagree with them, I might have given it a shot. But no.
Knowing what I know now about the book, I don't think I would have gone out of my way to read it. But we needed something to go along with the MODOK drop on Hulu, and I wanted to save head games for when we review the show. And it's not that I didn't enjoy the book, but I enjoy stupid shit. So, it was a very straightforward...
It's the death of Hawkman, where I wonder if Hawkman dies.
Well, MODOK's in love with Angela, who falls from the sky like manna from heaven. And so in between killing Marvel characters, he's also expressing his great love for Angela, and who, rebuffs him, a la, it's kind of a King Kong Beauty and the Beast situation where, she's okay partnering up with him to solve the mystery of why she was dropped out of the sky, and killing bad guys or badder guys. She's not going to fuck him, despite his machinations to get her to do so.
MODOK is not physically capable of the act of...
Hey, he's got a lot of extensions. There's all kinds of things he could do to her. Moving on, we dropped...
No, wait. Go back just a minute.
Oh, God.
I didn't say there's no possibility for manual stimulation. I said he's a head that's mostly machine with little baby arms and little baby legs, and he doesn't actually have a torso or a pelvis. The man has no junk.
Yeah, I understand. MODOK has no genitalia, which is why he wants to kill everyone all the time. Listen.
It doesn't help his disposition, I imagine.
We re-aired because today was Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead. To coincide with that, we re-aired another Zack Snyder movie that we mentioned earlier, Batman v Superman. So that's in the archives. That's one of our early movie reviews before it was called Damn You Hollywood. Later today, myself and Jason Teasley are going to review Zombies 1, Zombies 2, and the freshly dropped today, Aquarium of the Dead. This past week, you could hear our reviews of Daredevil Season 2, Jupiter's Legacy Volume 1, the comic, Spiral from the Book of Saw, Saliva Every 20 Years, and then a whole bunch of their singles. X-Men number 11 from Unspoken Issues. Robert and I had a 2-hour conversation last night about the first 8 episodes of Jupiter's Legacy. Me and some wrestling fans reviewed Under Siege from Impact and WrestleMania Backlash from the WWE. Tomorrow, we are re-airing our Long Road to Ruin discussion of Missing in Action from Chuck Norris. Pat Mullen will be on that show. Sunday is our re-airing of Luke Cage Season 1, and then in the evening time, myself and Sean Comer will be reviewing Shadow and Bone. This week coming up, we're reviewing Man of Steel by Brian Michael Bendis, Invincible Volume 2, 8 is Enough. Robert's going to push me in the pool and take over Metal Hammer of Doom because we're going to review Galactic Kraken, Starship Velociraptor. Robert and I are also going to review Castlevania 4, apparently infinitely better than Season 3, which we took out in the back and shot. Sticking with cartoons for the week, myself and Ronnie Adams will be reviewing Invincible Season 1. Pat and I will be starting up a new series, The Four Kings of Boxing. We're starting with Roberto Duran. We'll also re-airing our Unsolved Mysteries Warriors title run episode to coincide with the Dark Side of the Ring episode of The Ultimate Warrior, which will be airing at 9 o'clock that night, Eastern Standard Time. And then a week from today, we've got something old, something new, something blue. Cruella will be in theaters, and what better way to celebrate the release of yet another movie featuring the bad guy as the protagonist than re-airing our review of Maleficent when that came out. Jeff Sloboda had so much fun discussing Stowaway that he's coming back to do it again. This time, this brave soul volunteered to review with Michael B. Jordan's Without Remorse with me. So we're a day late and a dollar short, but hey, there's always time for Michael B. Jordan, right? Robert Winfree, go ahead and do your plugs.
Yeah, sure. Michael B. Jordan. Time. Yeah, sure. You can... Mark referenced a bunch of stuff that we did already, some stuff that we have coming up. Please do subscribe, follow along, however your particular podcast platform of choice works. Follow us, give us a like, comment, subscribe, review, share. Mostly share. If you're listening to this already, share us on your social media network of choice. It helps us out a lot. All right, let's see. I have stuff. I cover professional wrestling on occasion for 411 Mania. AEW's Dark Elevation on Mondays, where you can hear people, where you can read people complain that I complain about the runtime of something that's 2.5 hours and is not really built for that kind of a runtime. MLW's re-airing of Underground, where you can see me dump on stuff from 2003. Most of the time. Not all the time. Most of the time. And tonight, actually, Friday, I'll be covering WWE SmackDown, where Roman Reigns is kind of a shining jewel of interest in the professional wrestling world, but they're really dropping the ball on kind of everything else on that show. And Saturday, I will be covering UFC on ESPN Plus 46 in the MMA zone of 411 Mania. So come by and listen to me talk about that, or you follow along as I cover that. Main event's really, really good, actually. Cody Garbrandt and Rob Font is a heck of a fight. And Sundays, I host the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast, where you can find me talking about the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. This week will be review of the event on Saturday, preview of the upcoming one next Saturday, and whatever news happens to break between now and then. I think that's pretty much it for me. Thank you all very much for listening. On behalf of Mark, who we should just start calling Pedro because I've got something for his punk ass.
Okay, everyone. Thanks for joining us here.
I had to just get that in there once.
Thanks for joining.
God, I botched it too. It's not Pedro, it's Poncho. I hate that song, but I wound up listening to it. It got kind of, and now it's stuck in my head, and I hate it. I need to get it out.
Be well, be safe, and behave.